In my book, Learning to Be, I talk about my story of waking up one morning, August the 27th. My girls were in middle school at the time, and ours was a very busy household, lots of doing. Matter of fact, the title of this book, before my editors encouraged me to do something a little more polite, was Learning to Be in a Doo-Doo World. And I always said you can take that doo-doo any way you want to. The story that I tell is my story, and it's the story of what happens when we allow our narrative, the story we've been telling ourselves about how we show up in the world, the story we've been telling ourselves about who we are and whose we are, and what rights we have and what rights we don't have, and how we have to earn our way of being present in the world. And so for me, on August the 27th, what happened is I got up, I fixed breakfast, I did what I normally did because ours was a busy household. My husband and I were in our 7th year of pastoring. We had grown from 9 members to 3,500 members at that point, and it was busy. We didn't realize that we should have had more staff. It was just my husband and I and a secretary. We never envisioned being pastors. My husband sold real estate by day, and if you want to know what he did by night, get his book Touched. Healing the Wounds of a Broken World. Because he had a day life and he had a night life. When he accepted Christ, he closed out the night life. Hallelujah. Sometimes I ask him to talk about it, and he said, baby, I don't want to talk about it because the statute of limitations might not be up yet. We had a lot going on. And so I always tried to make sure that breakfast was the time when our family really kind of gelled, reconnected. So my girls got used to drinking apple cider and champagne glasses and heart-shaped pancakes and all kinds of stuff. When they were reading the book Green Eggs and Ham, we had green eggs and ham. Because I wanted to be a good mama. I wanted to be a good wife. I wanted to be a good pastor. I wanted to be a good little girl, and I was 37 years old. Wanting to be a good little girl. And no doubt there's some good boys and good girls in this room too. And may I suggest to you that if you haven't already given up the narrative about being a good little girl or a good little boy, that it might be time. You see, because my good little girl narrative drove me to the edge. Because you see, you can get to a place where you can't do enough to feel better about yourself. You can't do enough. You can't win enough certificates. You can't get enough awards. You can't get enough pats on the back. You can't get enough praise. And if you're an addict, addicted to other people's acceptance and approval like I was, the church was the perfect place. You could get high all day and then you'd crash every night. Waiting for somebody to accept you and approve of you and pat you on the back and say, oh, that was a great service. That was a great Bible study. What a great wedding ceremony. What a terrific funeral. We've never had a funeral done like that before. In the midst of my crash, that day, August the 27th, I hugged my kids and I hugged my husband and he took them to school, and I went into the bathroom to put on my makeup, and it began the unraveling of me. All of a sudden I began to feel very, very sick. I got in the bed. Well, I called my secretary, asked her to reschedule our day. Long story short, got in the bed, began to sleep 18 to 20 hours a day for months. After about 2 weeks of that, my husband said, baby, something is wrong. This isn't just you exhausted. And so I went to see a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist said that I was diagnosed from the DSM-4 as having a major depressive episode. I said, did I have a nervous breakdown? And she said, no, there's no such thing in the DSM-4. But my grandmother would have said, baby, you had a nervous breakdown. Out of that experience, there are 2 questions that arose, and I'm going to pose those 2 questions to you because I think they are the 2 questions that each of us must ask ourselves And maybe you won't crash because of a mental health diagnosis. Maybe yours will be a divorce or a business falling apart or a dream falling apart or a relationship that gets torn apart in some way or another by death or divorce or a decision. Maybe for you, the rug will get pulled from under your feet in some other way. In many cases, for some of us, COVID-19 has been the rug being pulled from under our feet because everything we thought we understood, we no longer understand. Everything we had depended on, we no longer can depend on. Everything we had believed in and thought about ourselves, we no longer believe in and no longer can believe that that is true about us anymore. Because COVID-19 has given us silence and solitude, an opportunity to be in the chrysalis of change. A time of transformation. We had a certain kind of orientation and we called it our lives. We entered into a global pandemic and we became disoriented. We had to find new ways of learning to be. And so here we are still in the midst of a global pandemic, and we are invited to ask ourselves two questions. Number one, who am I? Who am I? Who am I really? Am I really all about having to do things so that I can have something, so that I can be somebody? You see, in Western society, that's very much the model. Do something so you can have something and then you can be somebody. But I want to suggest to you that there's another way of being. Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. The word says, in him we live and move and have our being. It didn't say in him we live and move and have our doing. Says we have our being. That if I want to know who I really am, then I better know who God is. And see, for me, my crash was the disorientation of all my beliefs about who I was. You see, I thought that if I just showed up and was a good little girl and gave it my best effort and worked hard and did everything people expected me to do, then I would be somebody. I would be worthy. I would be acceptable. I would be valued. I'd be appreciated. So what's the belief you've been operating in your narrative? What's been driving you? What is it that's been pushing you? What's been causing you to strive? What my crash did for me was gave me an opportunity to come to know God in a way that I had never known God. You see, part of my makeup as a 1 on the Enneagram is we follow rules and we want everything right. So if I walk down the hallway and I see a picture that's crooked, I'm going to stop and fix it, even if it's in the mall. And so for me, I had to ask myself, well, actually, God asked me in the process of living with this mental health diagnosis. Did you hear me say living with this mental health diagnosis? So I want to say to you, you can live with whatever your diagnosis is. The key is you got to choose to live. And the second part of that is you're going to have to learn to live differently. Learning to live from a place of being. The Spirit said to me one day, Juanita, who are you? And I thought to myself, now, even in the state of mind I'm in right now, which is not a very good place, if I don't know who I am and you don't know who I am, there's a problem, Houston. And what I came to realize is that it wasn't a time to be funny. That God was really inviting me to notice what I was noticing, to pay attention to myself and to the narrative I'd been telling myself for all those years. And so when God said, who are you? It shook everything in me. God had my attention. And so God began to invite me to find out who I was. But in doing so, I also began to find out about who God was. Aspects of God that I had not known, because I had grown up with God being very judgmental and very much ready to punish me, somewhere between a cross between Santa Claus and Judge Judy, and either one of them could jack up your Christmas, if you know what I mean. And so there in that space where I couldn't get out of bed, where I slept 18 to 20 hours a day, where I couldn't even remember how to go to the bathroom, I literally couldn't remember how to get out of the bed to go to the toilet. And it was in that moment that God began to say to me that if I would let him, that God would help me build a life I could live with. Because you see, that other life before August the 27th had sucked the life out of me. The second question that we're invited to ask, and that nobody really asks. Lean in, lean forward like you're being real nosy. Lean in, come on, lean in. Everybody, lean in. If your back's not broken, lean in, lean in, lean in, all right? Now, here's the nosy question. What would you love? What would you love? What would you love? In the 4 quadrants of your life, time and money, freedom, health and well-being, vocation, and relationships, what would you love in your relationships? You don't like the negative, nasty people you're hanging out with? What would you love? Vocation, the way you're called to serve in the world, and I'm getting ready to rewire. I'm not retiring, I'm rewiring for the next act, all right? And as I rewire, I expect to see more of you all over the world. As I share transformational processes and experiences that God is inviting us to, because we're called to be green, growing, ever becoming human beings, not human doings. What would you love in the way of time and money freedom? Would you like to be able to write a check to your favorite charity or to underwrite some good work that's being done in your community? Would you like the freedom to have some time to volunteer in the neighborhood school or in that school that's underserved and needs to see some white people showing up who give a damn? Excuse my French. I learned that from my husband. What would you love? That thing that makes your soul ache when you go to bed at night. That thing that you've been longing to do. What would you love? That thing that you think, I've always had an interest in that. When I was a little kid, I always wanted to. What would you love? I hope that echoes in you. What would you love? Because what God helped me to see is that what God wanted for me was for me to be in love with doing the things I love doing. And that in so doing, God would not only do something incredible and extraordinary for me, but love would do something incredible and extraordinary for the people around me when I did that thing I loved. What would you love? We talk about God being love. And so often, God will drop an inspired idea in our spirit, and we think, oh, that's a great idea. I'd love to do that. And then we push it to the back burner. And we would say, I'm going to wait until I pay off the mortgage, or I'll wait till the kids get out of college. I'll wait till we take care of getting that credit card debt down to zero. I'm going to wait. Tomorrow is not promised. Has COVID-19 taught us nothing? My husband has buried 8 friends from COVID. The only moment I have is right here, right now. And I'm grateful to be here with you. Asking you, what would you love? And so the Lord asked me, what would I love? And I said, God, I don't know. I don't have any ideas. I've been so busy doing that I haven't invested any time in being still, being with the things that are thoughts even, that are just passionate thoughts to me. So what would you love? As I close this talk, I want to invite you to stand. And I want to invite you to set an intention for yourself. That when you leave out of this room, you'll take some time and ask yourself, what would I love as it relates to my relationships? What would I love as it relates to my vocation, the way I'm being invited to serve in the world? I want you to pay attention to your longing and to your discontent, because those are ways that Spirit tries to engage us in moving into the places that would be life-giving for us. Your longing. What have you been longing for? What have you been discontented with? What is it that you feel like you just can't keep living like that? You can't keep doing that. You can't keep showing up in that way. Or maybe it's some circumstance or situation that you're discontented with. God is often using longing, passion, desire, pleasure. Dare I say pleasure among Christian people? Delight, sheer joy. Ask yourself, what would I love as it relates to my vocation? What would I love as it relates to relationships? What would I love in time and money freedom? What would I love in health and well-being? I have a 4-year-old grandson. He's really into dinosaurs. I mean, really into dinosaurs. And so every time I go to visit him in Indianapolis, I have a purple comforter on my bed. And so we pretend that he is on Mount Purple, and then I sit on the beige carpet, and that is the Valley of Beige. And I am the announcer for the particular dinosaur that's going to show up on Purple Mountain. So he goes into my closets and he says, Gemma, I'm going to be a Stegosaurus. And I say, okay. He said, announce me, Gemma. And so he opens the closet door. He comes out and I say, ladies and gentlemen, this is Stegosaurus. He's on Purple Mountain. Give him a round of applause. And I do this over and over and over and over again, right? And I love it. I love it. And I wouldn't trade it for the world, because he's only going to be 4 for so long, and he's only going to want to play with his Gemma for so long. And so I'm learning to be in that space. A phone call won't distract me. I will not allow my to-do list to get in the way of my being with this 4-year-old who thinks I am the cat's pajamas. Because you see, when I engage in being with him and being in that space of love and in that space of wonder, then I get to take some love and wonder to my work. I want to invite you to set an intention that you'll leave out of this place asking yourself, who am I really? And knowing that the answer is in God. So breathe more with God. Sit on the grass more with God. Go sit in the boat more with God. Get in the RV and drive with God. Pull the top down on that convertible that you got dry rotting in the garage and drive with God. So here's the intention. Will you bring your hands out in front of you and spread out? Because I don't want you to slap your neighbor. Spread out. All right? Spread out, really. Come on, move. Spread out. You're going to have to move your arms out to here. Spread out, people. You would think by now we would know social distancing. Should I say social distance yourself, people? All right, so here we go. Bring your hands to a close. I'll show you, and then you'll do what I'm doing. And here's the intention. I'm open and willing to receive and to give love. Can we do it together? I'm open and willing to receive and to give love. Let's do it again. I'm open and willing to receive and to give love. Notice I said receive first, because you can't give what you don't have. Let's do it again. And with joy and enthusiasm, like Jesus is standing behind me. Come on, people. Y'all ready? I don't want no Putin kind of talk. I want you to really get in there and cheer it. Blow my hair back, why don't you? All right, here we go. I'm open and willing to receive and to give love. Do it again. I'm open and willing to receive and to give love. I'm open and willing to receive and to give love. Now give yourself a hug and hold on tight, because you've just set an intention, and that intention can change the way you've been doing life. And that intention can invite you to learn to be your most expansive self, to be your most radiant self, to be your most dynamic you. I love you, family, and there's nothing you can do about it.